Hey there, sleepy traveler. Tonight, we have a reservation at a very particular establishment. An establishment that doesn't appear on any modern map, one that exists somewhere between the Mojave Desert and your imagination, between 1976 and forever. It has mirrored ceilings, pink champagne on ice, and a staff that hasn't changed in nearly 5 decades. By the end of tonight's story, you may find yourself able to check out, but you may never truly leave the orbit of this song. This is the true story, the complete history, the mythology and the reality of the Eagles Hotel California. Not just a song, but a universe. Before we begin our journey down that dark desert highway, I want you to get truly comfortable. Feel the weight of gravity pulling you gently into the mattress. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears and allow your breathing to slow until it matches the rhythm of my words. The year is 1976, but to understand how we got there, we need to travel back just a little further to a place where the smog meets the ocean in a city that devours artists whole. In the winter of 1975, in a small rental house tucked into Coldwater Canyon, Beverly Hills, Don Felder sat alone on a tattered sofa, cradling his beloved Takamine 12-string guitar. The Christmas lights were still up in February, casting red and green shadows across the walls, and Felder, who was not yet a full member of the Eagles, not really, was noodling, just noodling. He had been messing around with a tuning he'd discovered by accident, a variation on standard tuning that gave his guitar a mystical, bell-like quality. It was in B minor, a key that feels inherently melancholy, yearning, incomplete. And between sips of coffee that had gone cold, his fingers found a chord progression that made him stop completely. It was a descending bass line, moving like footsteps down a spiral staircase, E minor, F sharp, D, E7, then resolving into that iconic B minor sus2. He played it again and again. The rhythm felt different, not quite rock and roll, not quite flamenco. It had a reggae lilt to it, an island sway, but with Spanish flavor. Felder, in his later years, would call it his Mexican reggae piece. He knew immediately that this was not a fragment to be forgotten. This was a foundation. He set up his 4-track TAC recorder, the same model that had captured countless demos in bedrooms across Los Angeles, and recorded exactly 90 seconds of music, just the chord progression twice through, ending on an unresolved chord that hung in the air like a question mark. He didn't know what the question was yet. 3 days later, the Eagles gathered at Felder's house for one of their informal songwriting sessions. These were brutal affairs, musical thunderdome, where 5 egos entered and maybe one good idea left. Glenn Frey was there, the Detroit charmer who had founded the band with Don Henley, the one who never forgot a slight and never forgave a weakness. Don Henley was there, the drummer with the literary soul, the poet from Texas who wanted to be a senator but became a rock star instead. Randy Meisner, the sweet-voiced bass player from Nebraska who was already feeling the walls close in. And Joe Walsh, the wild card, the Cleveland madman who had joined to add guitar pyrotechnics. They were working on what would become their 5th album, already successful beyond their wildest dreams. One of these nights had made them superstars, but success had not brought peace. It had brought cocaine and jealousy and the gnawing realization that they were trapped in a machine of their own making. Felder, who had joined as a sideman and fought his way to full membership, waited until the room got quiet, that specific quiet of creative exhaustion. "I have something," he said. He pressed play on his dusty cassette player, and that 90-second demo filled the room. The reaction was immediate. Henley stopped drumming his fingers on the coffee table. Frey leaned forward. Walsh, who rarely took anything seriously, tilted his head like a dog hearing a whistle only he could detect. When it finished, there was silence. Then Henley spoke. "Play it again." Felder played it again. "Where did that come from?" Frey asked. Felder shrugged. "My fingers, the guitar, I don't know. It just appeared." Henley stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the canyon where the morning mist was burning off. "It's a movie," he said quietly. "That's not a song. That's a film." He turned back to the room. "It's about Los Angeles, about what we've built here. It's about the trap." Frey nodded slowly. "The Hotel California." And just like that, a title was born. But titles are easy, songs are hard, and this one would take 8 months to gestate.
Henley took ownership of the lyrics, not because he was the only one who could write. Frey was a brilliant storyteller, but Henley had the obsession, the perfectionism, the need to polish every syllable until it shone like a gemstone. He set up shop in his house on Stone Canyon Road, a Spanish-style villa that was already becoming a gilded cage. For weeks, he did nothing but listen to Felder's demo, over and over, letting images surface like bubbles from deep water. He thought about the Beverly Hills Hotel, the Pink Palace on Sunset Boulevard, where he'd seen old Hollywood give way to new rock and roll debauchery. He thought about the Modelo Hotel near Hollywood and Vine, a flophouse where burglars, pimps, and failed actors shared walls. He thought about California, the promise of it, the golden dream that drew people westward, only to find that the gold was actually pyrite. And he thought about religion, his own upbringing in Texas, fire and brimstone, the constant threat of damnation. He wanted to capture the feeling of being on a journey, a spiritual quest that leads not to enlightenment, but to a gilded prison. He wrote in longhand on yellow legal pads, the same kind used by lawyers and detectives in film noir. The opening lines came first because they are perfect, because they set the scene with cinematic precision. On a dark desert highway, cool wind in my hair, warm smell of colitas rising up through the air. Now, for decades, people have wondered, what are colitas? The truth is both mundane and beautiful. Colitas is Spanish for little tails, but in the slang of the California desert, it refers to the flowering tops of the cannabis plant, the most potent part, the part that smells sweet and skunky and hangs heavy in the warm air. Henley wasn't necessarily endorsing drug use. He was simply painting a picture, the sensory details of a drive through the desert at twilight, the golden hour, when the light makes everything look holy. But the lyric works on another level too, suggesting small endings, little deaths, the tail ends of things. Up ahead in the distance, he saw a shimmering light, not a heavenly light, not quite, but something seductive, promising rest, promising shelter. The Hotel California. Here was where Henley's literary ambitions crystallized. He wasn't just writing about a building, he was writing about a state of mind. The mission bell, signifying both religious calling and colonial conquest. The voice, welcome to the Hotel California. And that voice is important because Henley imagined it not as sinister, but as reassuring, comfortable, maternal almost. Such a lovely place, such a lovely face. The horror of the song is that the hotel isn't ugly, it's beautiful, intoxicatingly so. She lit up a candle, they raised a glass. This is communion, but inverted, sacraments of excess. As the verses accumulated, so did the mythology. The Mercedes-Benz, the pink champagne on ice. These weren't random images. Henley was documenting the specific excesses of their own lives. The expensive German cars they bought with cash. The bottles of Dom Perignon that floated in silver ice buckets at record company parties. The mirrors full of cocaine that turned nice boys from the suburbs into predators. We are all just prisoners here of our own device. That line, that single line, contains the entire thesis. They weren't trapped by managers or record labels or fame. They were trapped by their own appetites, their own choices, the device, the apparatus they had constructed around themselves. And in the master's chambers they gathered for the feast. The master, is it the devil? Is it the music industry? Is it their own ambition? Henley wisely never said, because specificity would kill the dream, the nightmare. They stab it with their steely knives, but they just can't kill the beast. The beast is never defined and shouldn't be. It is addiction, it is ego, it is the insatiable hunger for more success, more drugs, more women, more everything. And the final verse, the attempt to escape, coming back to consciousness, running for the door, only to find the nightman, the concierge of this psychic hotel. "Relax," said the nightman. "We are programmed to receive. You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave." That final couplet, arguably the most famous in rock history, came to Henley in a flash. He was in the studio bathroom, staring at his own reflection, eyes bloodshot from 3 days without sleep, and he realized they could stop touring, they could stop recording, they could quit the band, but they would always be the Eagles, always be these specific people who had seen too much, done too much. The Hotel California wasn't a place you visited, it was a place you became. The Eagles recorded at Criteria Studios in Miami in the winter of 1976. The studio was becoming legendary. The Bee Gees had just finished Saturday Night Fever there. Eric Clapton had recorded 461 Ocean Boulevard in the same rooms. It was a fortress of sound surrounded by palm trees and temptation. But the sessions for Hotel California were different from anything Criteria had seen before. The band arrived with Felder's demo and a mountain of cocaine. Bill Shimzik, their producer, had set up a literal coke toilet, a bathroom that was reserved exclusively for powder. The exhaust fans ran 24/7, and interns would emerge with pupils like saucers, holding bags of white powder like takeout orders. But despite the excess, or perhaps because of it, the precision of the recording was surgical. The first challenge was the tuning. That Takamine 12-string, Felder's magic box, wouldn't stay in tune for more than a few minutes in the humid Miami air. Bill had to keep a hairdryer in the control room, warming the guitar between takes, coaxing the wood to expand and contract until the strings settled. They recorded the basic track live, all 5 members in a circle. The groove was elusive, neither straight rock nor disco nor jazz. It existed in its own rhythmic pocket. Meisner's bass line had to lock with Henley's hi-hat, creating that hypnotic pulse that feels like driving, mile after mile. Felder played the rhythm on his 12-string, capoed at the 7th fret to get that bell-like chime. And then there was the matter of the guitar solos, because there are 2, not 1, but 2 intertwining solos, a conversation between Felder and Walsh that represents the pinnacle of rock guitar arrangement. Joe Walsh was the new guy, having replaced Bernie Leadon, and he was determined to prove himself. But he was also respectful. He knew Felder had birthed the song. "You take the first solo, it's your child." So Felder laid down a solo, melodic, precise, climbing up the neck of his Gibson Les Paul, crying out in B minor. Then Walsh took the second half, and his approach was completely different, wilder, more vocal, using his signature talkbox effect to make the guitar literally sing words. The 2 solos dovetail perfectly, like 2 travelers meeting on that desert highway, passing the story between them. It took 3 days to get the solos right. 3 days of the same 8 bars, played hundreds of times, until Bill called out from the control room, "That's the one, that's magic." But the vocal took even longer. Henley was a perfectionist about his voice.
He would do take after take until his throat bled. He wanted a specific tone, weary, wise, world-weary, but not cynical. On the fourth day, at 3 a.m., after 42 takes, he nailed it. When he sang "You Can Never Leave," there was a slight crack, a fragility that Shimzik insisted they keep. "That's the humanity," the producer said. "That's what makes it real." They layered harmonies, Frey's high tenor floating above like a warning, Meisner's pure falsetto providing an angelic counterpoint to the darkness of the lyrics. By the end of the second week, they had something. They knew it. The studio staff would gather outside the control room whenever they played it back. Secretaries and janitors and other musicians working on different albums, all drawn to that sound. It was undeniable. But as they packed up to return to Los Angeles, none of them, not one, predicted what would happen next. How this song would become bigger than the band itself. How it would devour them.
A gripping, dramatic, yet soothingly told story to fall asleep to. The album Hotel California was released in December of 1976. It entered the charts immediately, and by March of 1977, the title track was everywhere. FM radio, which was still the king of rock, played it on the hour, every hour. It became the most requested song in America. But with great success comes great scrutiny. And in the overheated religious climate of the late 1970s, a dark rumor began to circulate. It started with televangelists, men in polyester suits sweating under television lights, waving Bibles and warning of demons in the disco. They claimed that if you played Hotel California backwards, you could hear satanic messages. Specifically, they claimed you could hear, "Satan, he hears this, he had me believe in him," and "Yes, Satan organized his own religion." The rumor spread like a virus. Youth pastors played the backward tape at church meetings, the distorted sounds convincing parents that their children were being brainwashed by rock music. The Eagles were baffled. Here was a song about materialism and excess, about the dangers of hedonism, being accused of promoting Satanism. The irony was crushing. Don Henley addressed it in interviews, exhausted. It's about the dark side of the American dream, about excess. It's not about Satan. But the denial only fueled the conspiracy. In 1983, a group called the Parents Music Resource Center, led by Tipper Gore, would launch a full-scale war on rock music, using Hotel California as evidence of occult influence. The band received death threats. Their concerts were picketed by Christians holding signs, "Eagles equals Satan's birds." Record burnings were organized in the Midwest. Shelves of vinyl melting and warping in bonfires, the sound of the master laughing. But here's the fascinating truth about backmasking. Creating intelligible backward messages is extraordinarily difficult. To make words sound clear when reversed, you have to record them phonetically reversed, planning the deception from the start. The satanic phrases in Hotel California are auditory pareidolia. The human brain seeks patterns, finds meaning in randomness. When you reverse Henley's vocals, you hear sounds, and your brain, primed by suggestion, turns those sounds into words. But there was one real mystery: the album cover. Photographed by David Alexander at the Beverly Hills Hotel, though the band would later claim it was a different hotel, perhaps to avoid trespassing charges. The cover shows the hotel at twilight, palm trees silhouetted against a purple sky. But look closely. In the balcony windows, some fans claim to see the figure of Satan,
or Anton LaVey, founder of the Church of Satan. Others claim to see a burning man. The truth is less dramatic. The figures are simply people captured by long exposure in the fading light, blurry and indistinct. But the myth persisted. And perhaps the Eagles didn't try hard enough to stop it. Because here's a secret about rock stars in the 1970s. They loved the mystery. Glenn Frey once admitted, "We decided to let the song remain ambiguous, let people think what they want. It sells records." The satanic rumors made the song dangerous, forbidden fruit. Every teenager who heard the backward masking theory had to immediately listen to the song forward and backward, memorizing the lyrics. It drove sales into the stratosphere. The single went platinum. The album sold 26 million copies in the US alone. And the beast, the one they couldn't kill with their steely knives, grew fatter and stronger and more demanding. Success, true massive success, is a magnifier. It makes good relationships great and bad relationships unbearable. By 1977, the Eagles were the biggest band on earth, and they hated each other. The tensions had started during the recording, but now, on tour, playing Hotel California every night, sometimes twice a night, the fractures became canyons. Felder, who had given them the song, the foundation of their greatest achievement, felt marginalized. He was a full member of the band, legally, but Frey and Henley had become a duumvirate, ruling the Eagles like kings. Felder wasn't given songwriting credit on many tracks, despite contributing essential musical ideas. He watched as Frey and Henley collected the lion's share of royalties and the accolades, becoming the voice of the Eagles. At soundchecks, Felder would play the intro to Hotel California and growl into the microphone, "Welcome to the Hotel Felderfornia, still the song I wrote." It was meant as a joke, but no one laughed. Randy Meisner, the sweet-voiced bass player, was breaking down. He hated touring, hated the drugs, hated the constant noise. During a show in Knoxville in 1977, he refused to go on stage. "I can't do it," he wept. "I can't be here anymore." He left the band shortly after. Timothy B. Schmidt replaced him, just another piece in the rotating puzzle. Joe Walsh, who had brought such joyous chaos to the guitar solos, was slipping into addiction. His hotel rooms became dens of destruction. He once threw a television out of a 14th-story window just to hear the sound it made when it hit the pool. And Henley, the poet who had written the warnings about excess, was drowning in it. His relationship with model Lori Rodkin became violent and toxic. Their fights were legendary. The police were called to their house so often, the officers knew them by name. The band recorded The Long Run, their final studio album for 28 years in a climate of pure hostility. They would record their parts separately, communicating only through lawyers and engineers. Felder and Frey came to blows during a benefit concert for Senator Alan Cranston in 1980, on stage in front of thousands. They were arguing about money, about politics, about who knows what. Frey reportedly said, "Only 3 more songs until I kick your ass, Felder." And Felder, always the guitarist, always the technician, replied, "You're right, I guess that's one way to look at it." When the tour ended, they didn't speak for years. The Hotel California, that lovely place, had become a battleground. And the song itself, the beautiful creation, became a source of resentment. Every time they had to play it, which was every show forever, they were reminded of that moment
when they had been brothers, when the music had flowed between them like water. Now it was just business, just a condo in Aspen, just a lawsuit waiting to happen.
In 2001, Don Felder was fired from the Eagles. The reasons were never fully explained. Business disagreements, personal conflicts, the accumulated weight of 25 years of resentment. But the termination meant one thing. Felder had lost his share of the hotel. He filed a lawsuit, $50 million, alleging wrongful termination and breach of fiduciary duty. The legal documents, thousands of pages, revealed the inner workings of the band's finances. They had earned over $250 million since 1974, and yet the split was brutal. Henley and Frey testified that Felder had been difficult, uncooperative, that he had ceased to be an Eagle in spirit long before he was fired, in fact. Felder testified about the boys' club, the two-man rule, how Henley and Frey made all decisions while collecting equal shares of the profits. The trial lasted for years. Depositions, interrogations, the sordid details of rock star excess laid bare for juries to examine. In the end, they settled, the terms sealed, but Felder got his money, and he got something else, the right to tell his story. His autobiography, Heaven and Hell, My Life in the Eagles, was published in 2008. It detailed the corruption he saw, the decadence, the cruelty, and it cemented his legacy as the author, the composer of Hotel California's music. But here is where the story takes a sad turn, because Hotel California, that perfect collaboration, lyrics by Henley, music by Felder, arrangement by the whole band, solos by Walsh, became a weapon. In interviews, Henley began emphasizing that Felder had only contributed the chords, that the concept, the lyrics, the meaning were his alone. Felder, in his own interviews, would play the original demo, the Mexican reggae tape, proving that the essential DNA of the song, the melody, the progression, existed before Henley's words. The truth, as always, is somewhere in the middle. Without Felder's guitar, there is no song. Without Henley's words, there is no meaning. Without Walsh's solo, there is no catharsis. It took 5 men, 5 very different men, to create this masterpiece. And the tragedy, the true tragedy, is that the creation that should have bound them together forever became the very thing that drove them apart. The song never died. While the band fought, while they sued, while they refused to speak, Hotel California continued its journey through culture. In 1994, the Gypsy Kings, flamenco royalty, recorded a version in Spanish, taking the song back to its acoustic roots, proving that the melody was universal. The chord progression has been analyzed by musicologists. It uses a technique called voice leading, where individual notes in the chords move smoothly, step by step, creating that sense of inevitability, of flowing downhill. It has been covered by artists as diverse as Alcatraz, the Cat Empire, and even William Shatner. It appeared in movies, The Big Lebowski, American Hustle, always signifying 1970s excess, always triggering recognition. But perhaps its most bizarre chapter came in 2017. In a small resort town in Mexico, the Hotel California, a real establishment, was sued by the Eagles. This Hotel California had opened in 1950, decades before the song, but the owners, seeing the marketing potential, had embraced the myth. They sold t-shirts, Hotel California, you can check out anytime you like. They played Eagles music constantly. They created a mythology that they were the inspiration. The Eagles, or rather Henley and Frey, sued for trademark infringement. The real Hotel California, the physical building with a
adobe walls and white stucco had to stop using its own name. It became the Todos Santos Hotel, a real place erased by fiction, or perhaps absorbed into fiction, because that is what Hotel California does. It transforms reality into myth. The taco stand becomes a feast, the flop house becomes a palace, the band becomes a legend, and the listener, you, lying there in the dark, becomes a traveler on that dark desert highway, forever checking in, forever seeking that shimmering light. So here we are at the end of our story. The Eagles reunited in 1994 for the Hell Freezes Over tour, named for Henley's comment that the band would get back together when hell froze. They played Hotel California, of course they did. Felder was gone by then, replaced by Stuart Smith, a session musician who could replicate the solos but had none of the history. Walsh played both guitar parts, his fingers dancing across two necks, and Henley sang, older now, wiser, his voice carrying the weight of years. You Can Never Leave. After Glenn Frey died in 2016, the song took on new meaning. Henley, the sole remaining founder, now sings it as a farewell to his brother. The hotel is death, and You Can Never Leave is the promise that the music, the legacy, the friendship persists beyond the grave. Don Felder, in his solo shows, still plays the intro. He tells the story, the same story I've told you tonight, but from his perspective. And when he reaches the solo, he closes his eyes, and for 3 minutes, he is 28 years old again, sitting in a rented house in Beverly Hills, discovering magic on a 12-string. The song has outlived the conflicts, it has outlived the drugs and the lawsuits and the bitterness. It plays on in every car that drives through the desert at night, on every radio station in every city, because Hotel California is not just a song about the 1970s, it is a song about wanting, about the human condition, about the fact that we are all, every one of us, checking into hotels of our own making, some lovely, some terrible, all inescapable. So sleep now, traveler, the night man is here, and he says, relax, you can check out anytime you like, but the dream, you can never leave. Good night.